is about, today we'll be talking about predictive in a little bit more detail. As I will be introducing you to the various processes involved in a predictive project. What are the different knowledge areas? What are the different process groups? How do we develop the phases in our project and things like that? So it will be an intensive, discussion on the details of predictive project today. So in a way, these things may not be covered in the current version of PMBOK in that much detail, what I am going to be discussing with you today. So if you want to know more about it, you may have to refer to the process group practice guide. Remember that?
Process group.
When I was telling you the references, there were 3 books. Yeah. So I'm specifically referring to the process group practice guide, right? Okay. Traditionally, in a predictive project, we have certain processes mentioned, which could be practiced in a predictive project. I'm not saying all of those processes must be adopted, but this is a good practice that anything you need to do in a project, whatever the project may be, it's not just a kind of a project. Any project in the world may follow those processes, right? And the good practices of those processes are mentioned in the PMBOK. Those are actually 49 different processes. Actually, you don't need to remember them. I will show you what those 49 processes are, and you have to pick and choose for your project. If you are doing a predictive project, I am not asking you to do all the 49 processes. You may tailor it according to your need, right? But I am so far not specifically talking about the project which you are handling, because I am saying that whatever the project is, you will have to tailor these processes according to your need and requirement, right? But they are good practices. These 49 processes could be viewed into different manners. One is from the perspective of the process groups. These 49 processes have been grouped into 5 process groups. On the left-hand side, you can see these 5 process groups. There would be certain processes which would be required while we are initiating the project. There will be some processes out of these 49 which will be required for planning of your project. Then in execution, monitoring and control, and closing. So all the 49 processes can be divided or distributed into these 5 groups. But all the processes in planning would deal with the planning, whether it is the planning of any area, it is the planning of scope or time or cost or anything. So this is how we look at the process groups, 5 process groups, and all the 49 processes are related to some of that process group. But you see, one process can only be related to one process group. It could not reside in more than one process groups. Okay, the second view is from the area of specialization. Every process out of these 49 would relate to some knowledge area. For example, on the right-hand side, you can see 10 different knowledge areas, right? These are just areas of specialization. There will be some processes related to integration of the project, some processes related to the scope of the project. I'm not talking about those processes in scope, some of them might be in planning, some of them might be in execution, some of them might be in monitoring and control, but I'm not discussing that right now. I'm just looking at the area of specialization. So there are 10 areas of specialization in which you may have to distribute these 49 processes. So they are listed on the right-hand side. We have scope, schedule, cost, quality, resources, communications, risk management, procurement, and stakeholder management. And this mechanism is particularly true for the predictive projects only. But if you are using a hybrid model, you may have this understanding at the higher level. The people who are sitting on top, like the project manager, project sponsor, they might be looking at things from this angle. But at the bottom, you may have a different mechanism of doing the work that might be more agile in nature. But because right now we are discussing the predictive mechanism, so these are the two different ways of looking at those 49 processes. Again, I would say each of the 49 processes would relate to any one of the knowledge areas only, right? That means every process, all of the 49 processes must have a link into one of the process groups as well as a link into one of the knowledge areas, right? Okay, if you understand that, let me ask you an interesting question. As I said, this is a generic mechanism. All projects in the world could be viewed in this angle that they all may have some process groups and they all may have some knowledge areas. If I ask you specifically from the perspective of your project, what are the phases of your project, any project which you are physically doing or you have done, what are the phases of your project? Have you ever divided your projects into phases?
Mm-hmm.
So how do they look like? What are the names of those phases?
I use like the stage gate. So the phases are, your initiation, your planning, your executing. I don't, it's on the left-hand side. Those are the phases that I use.
Okay. That is exactly what I was expecting.
Mm,
But this is a misunderstanding. As I have
mm,
already clarified to you, that these are the process groups. These are not the phases. Most of the project managers think that they are the phases. I
mm,
must clarify what a phase should look like. As
mm-hmm,
you just said, that you do it according to phase gates.
mm-hmm,
If there is a phase gate between one phase and the other,
mm-hmm,
then initiation must have finished as if planning can be started. Planning must have finished as if execution could start.
mm.
Execution must have finished as monitoring and control can start, and monitoring and control must finish as if closing can start. Apparently, it might look like that this is how things are happening.
I think I think maybe if you're using those terminology, then no, I do
Then
not
no,
use those on the
exactly.
left.
That
It
was the point.
sounds the same, but it's not. It actually splits into ideation, defining,
Yes,
analyze, implementation, and control.
exactly, exactly, exactly.
And then close. So there are six stages,
Right,
and
right.
for example, when you're doing ideation or scoping or
Right.
analyzing, you
Okay.
are doing planning in all of those.
Yeah, exactly. That was my point. That was my point.
Okay,
That
under.
when you are actually doing a project, you are not having these initiation, planning, execution as your phases, but
Mm,
particular to the need of your project, you
mm,
will define certain stages or phases which
mhm,
are explicitly separate from each other,
mhm,
right? One has to finish like ideation has to finish as you can enter into the next phase.
Correct.
But here what happens is in process groups, you see, when you are planning, you could have started execution in the meanwhile. While the execution is going on continuously throughout execution, the monitoring and control is also happening. Some things
Mhm.
keep closing at several points in time. So practically, this is not a life cycle at all.
Mhm.
Initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, and control, and closing is not a life cycle. It is basically just a grouping of certain processes. That's about all. These names should not and cannot relate to your phases. Again, I would say you would have to name your phases or your stages according to the technical need of your project. You should not have some standard 6 phases or 5 phases. Well, I am not against that. If you are doing a similar kind of work on a similar kind of technology, it might very much be possible that all your projects may have very similar phases,
Yeah.
right? For example, if you are doing a IT project,
Mhm.
every IT project may have the same stages,
Mhm.
but you are independent. You may see that this IT project is a unique IT project. We have to do something unique in it, and therefore I may not follow the predefined stages, and I would decide my own stages for this specific project. So you are
Yeah.
at liberty to do that,
Mhm.
right? So uh, you are already aware about the concept of a stage gate, which I would call it a phase gate, because in America we call it phases, and in UK people call it stages. If you are following the Prince 2 mechanism, you probably might be using the term stages, but that is one and the same thing. Whether you call it a phase or you call it a stage, it is one and the same thing,
Yeah.
right? Okay, when a phase is completed, and you see, every phase is like a mini project
Yes.
and it has some product at the end of it. So I
Yeah.
would consider every phase as a project, and in every phase, I may be applying all or some of those 49 processes.
Mhm.
I might be using in every phase initiation, planning, execution, monitoring, and control, and closing. I might be using all or some of the knowledge areas, 10 of the knowledge areas in every phase. So
Mhm.
that means when I talk about these process groups and knowledge areas, I'm not only talking about the whole project, I might be applying the whole mechanism to
Yeah.
every phase.
Mhm.
More so the reason these are the process groups are not the phases.
Why do they call it process groups?
Because the 49 processes are distributed into certain operational working groups, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
like, in planning, we will concentrate on all the works of planning, whether they relate to any of the knowledge area. The scope has to be planned, the schedule has to be planned, the cost has to be planned, quality has to be planned. You create the plans for everything in planning, and so on and so forth. So you understand what this is all about. Okay.
Mhm.
Uh, are you aware about the concept of a timeline? What is
Mhm.
a timeline?
A timeline typically has a start and it has an end and dependencies. So
Just
for each of the stages,
okay.
it will have a time, like I don't know the correct technical terminology. I'll just explain to you what a
Right.
timeline is to
I,
me,
I'm
right?
fine with it. I'm fine with it.
Yeah. So It's essentially you when you first start a project, you start to draft up a high level timeline as to when the project is start and when
Yes.
is desired to end, and then you try to break it down into little into the stages, and then you see if it will fit or not as a high level. And then you start to get to the next level of details where you start to then get the
So
requirements and understand whether whether you need to extend the timeline or not.
does it look something like a schedule?
Yeah.
Okay. That is exactly what I wanted to clarify. A timeline is not exactly a schedule, but as you
Mhm.
said earlier, it is a kind of you know a straight line on which the events are occurring. Like this is
Mhm.
my project on a
Mhm.
straight line, and I say, okay, on this straight line, I have
Mhm.
got uh, like the start of the project
Mhm.
and end of the project.
Mhm.
And then I say, what are the major things which I need? What are the major milestones? Maybe there is a milestone here, there is a milestone here, there is a milestone here. I define all the milestones which are actually defined in a contract,
Mhm.
right? Now,
Yeah.
based on that, I start to divide this project into various phases.
Correct.
So I would say, okay, if I have the phases, maybe from this point to this point might be my first phase.
Mhm.
From this point to this point might be another phase. From this
Mhm.
point to this point might be another phase. And from
Mhm.
this point to this point might be another phase. So maybe I have divided my project in these four phases. Got it?
Yeah.
So on a timeline, we do these things in a straight line, but I don't mind if you could do it just like you do in schedule. You say this is my phase one, and this is my phase two, and
Mhm.
this is my phase three, and this is my
Mhm.
phase four. I don't mind. It is
Mhm.
still a timeline, but
Mhm.
it basically the more important thing is that I am putting the milestones
Mhm.
here.
Yeah.
But it is not a schedule as such. Basically, the story starts with a straight line.
Yes. What's a schedule?
A schedule is kind of a complete flow, like the thing, like the phases you have created, they will be opened up. Every activity will be shown in a schedule in the shape of a Gantt chart.
Mm.
So before, when you are doing the initial planning, you are trying to understand the project. You must create a timeline, and that is the time when you actually come up with the phases, right? And
Correct.
you see in this project, which is a hypothetical project, we have created four phases,
Hmm.
right? But next question is, how many phases could be there in a project?
You're actually correct. When I first initiate a project, my
Mhm.
timeline is never parallel. My timeline is always in a straight line,
Exactly.
one after the other after the other. And generally it starts with, obviously the ideation, it goes into scoping, it goes into analyze, it goes into implementation, and
Yes,
then it goes into go live. That's when
exactly.
it stopped. After go live, then the dependency, it becomes less important because the next part is about controlling and monitoring the project.
Exactly.
So it may go on for another 3 months, but I
Exactly.
don't necessarily need the entire project team for that.
Because this timeline is not exact calculation of the time. This is an
Correct. It's
approximate calculation of the
just
time.
high level. Yeah.
Yeah, very high level. But when
Yeah.
we develop a detailed Gantt chart, then we exactly know the start and finish date of every activity, not just the phases, every activity. So far we have not gone there. But anyways, my question was, when you are developing the timeline, you can decide the phases. What do you think? How many phases should be there in a project? Naturally, every project is going to be different.
It should be roughly about 5.
Okay. And what has your answer is correct. But what
Yeah.
are your reasonings? Why should they not be more than 5?
Because it's all about the
Risk of
risk of the project to the business. So I feel like, well, it's not feel. I think 5 is enough to de-risk
Mhm. Mhm.
the project essentially.
I understand. This is the correct understanding. Basically, we are dividing a complicated project into phases to make it easier for us,
Hmm.
right? And to do it in a better manner. And we don't want to divide it into 1,000 or 3,000 phases because
Hmm.
this will add to the complication. I can't even remember how many phases they are. I have to keep a notebook to tell that what are these 3,000 phases, and I can't control it all. I can't even remember it by heart. So
Yeah.
phases should be so few that could be humanly possible to remember and enumerate on your fingertips.
Yeah.
So we should not have too many phases. And
Yeah.
uh, what is the minimum number of phases that should be there in a project?
3.
Very good. Because one is not appropriate at all because that means we have no phases at all. Two means that we have, two is not really very practicable, though it could be. But for example, we are constructing a tunnel between England and France, and half of it is part of the England and half of it is part of the France. So
Hmm.
basically, this project has been divided into two phases:
Hmm.
the England part and the France part. Yes, of course, but naturally, the England part of the project would further be divided into phases, and the
Hmm.
France part will further be divided into sub-phases. So that way, I am not really a great appreciator of only two phases, and you very correctly said that there should at least be three phases. 5 is ideal, and how much more can we have? I would say never go into double figures because
Okay.
humanly it is not possible to enumerate more than that many items. Up to
Okay.
9 is too much for me, right? But 10
Yeah.
means that it is getting into complication. But again, I would say this all depends upon the nature of your project. If your project is too intricate, maybe you need to have more phases. So go up to 7 or 8 or 9. But beyond that, you must stop and think that is it really justifiable to have more phases in it?
Yeah.
What you can do is you can broadly classify your project into 5 phases. And if there are complications, you could create sub phases within your phases. That way, you can handle the complication. But
Yeah.
your answer is very correct that I also would appreciate not more than 5 phases,
Yeah.
right? But if the project is complicated, I say, okay, in phase one, I will have 3 sub phases. For example, you are doing ideation. So I would say first we will have gathering of some data, and that is sub phase one. And in sub phase two, we will analyze that data, and sub phase three, we'll brainstorm about on it.
I can't believe that no, I can't believe that a lot of people are moving from predictive.
Yes, I know. That is exactly why PMI says that now you could do it either in a predictive manner or agile manner. They didn't say that now the things can only be done in an agile manner. Predictive
Mm,
is never going to die, right? Predictive is
okay.
going to stay because there are some projects which
Mm,
are uh, can only be done in a predictive manner. They cannot be converted into agile. So
okay.
you must understand the characteristic of your project and then decide whether you should do it in a predictive manner, in a hybrid manner, or a agile manner. There will be certain projects always which can
Mm,
only be done in a predictive manner. But
okay.
the philosophy that everything can be done in a predictive manner has now been proven wrong.
Okay. I would love to hear more about that in our next lessons.
Definitely, definitely. So I hope this portion is clear to you. Should I proceed ahead?
Yeah.
Okay. Now we have the discussion about the 49 processes. You can
Mhm,
see on this chart was created by a very renowned person, Ricardo Vargas. He also had been, I think, on the board of directors on PMI. He
mhm,
created this based on the sixth edition of PMBOK, the previous
mhm,
edition, because that edition was exclusively predictive. So this diagram is beautiful because it covers almost everything which is in a
mhm,
predictive project.
mhm,
All the 49 processes are these boxes,
mhm,
and it shows here the five process groups: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. And you
mhm,
can clearly see there are two processes in initiating, and there are probably you can't count, but 24 processes in planning,
mhm,
10 processes in execution, 12
mhm,
processes in monitoring and control, and one in closing.
mhm,
If you add that up, you will come up with the answer 49 processes. But
mhm,
again, I would say all the 49 processes are not mandatory for you.
mhm,
It is you as a project manager who will decide which process is appropriate for my project, right?
yeah.
And you may decide not to do certain processes because they are not appropriate to the need of your project. But anyways, this is the distribution suggested by PMI as far as the process groups are concerned.
Mhm,
But as I said, every process in the process groups has, it is allocated, has a relation to one process group. Like
mhm,
this process is in initiation, and this process cannot be repeated in planning or execution. It cannot exist anywhere else but only here.
mhm,
But every process also has a relationship to a knowledge area.
mhm,
So we will mention in this, when I am defining these 49 processes, on top of every process, the name of the relevant knowledge area would also be written on it.
mhm,
So let us start and see what do we have. The very first process in initiation is to develop the project charter.
mhm,
That happens in initiation when we are starting the project, meaning this is the point from where the project starts.
mhm,
That also means the business case has already been developed,
mhm,
approved, and now the project sponsor has also been nominated, and he is writing this project charter. He is authorizing the project manager, who is also been nominated in this charter, and he
mhm,
is handing over the responsibility of the project through this document to the project manager.
mhm,
So there is nothing project manager has to do in this process, but he receives the authorization of the project in shape of a project charter. The
mhm,
author of this document is not project manager, but the project sponsor or the project board or the project steering committee. They are
mhm,
the people who decide that this project should be started.
Mhm.
This process relates to integration.
Mhm.
The knowledge area it relates to is integration, and there is a small little number written on top as well, which says 4.1.
Mhm.
In the older edition, the sixth edition of PMBOK, it had 13 chapters. First three chapters were introductory chapters, like the foundations, like life cycle and all that. But
Mhm.
from fourth chapter onwards, it was the knowledge areas. The first knowledge area, the fourth chapter was integration, fifth was scope, sixth was schedule, seventh was cost, eighth was quality, and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
So when we say 4.1, that means fourth chapter is integration. So 4.1 means first process of integration. 4 represents integration and 1 represents the first process of integration
In the book,
in the book. And book is a standard, and standard is just like a book of law. Like
which has nothing to do
yes,
with the knowledge area of expertise.
no. Knowledge area is integration. Knowledge area is integration, and the
Mhm.
process group is initiation. So project charter relates to the integration knowledge area as well as relates to the initiation process group. So we do have a reference both ways. This process does have a reference to the knowledge area integration, does have a reference to a initiation process group as well. Every process will have these two links. They must
But
relate to,
if you
yes.
go back to your previous slide,
Mhm.
integration is knowledge number one.
Exactly.
It's not number four.
Yes, but in the book, it starts with number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. So,
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
So that is that. Although if you count them, they are 1 to 10, but in the book, they are described in chapter
Yeah.
4, 5, 6, 7 till 13.
What's one, two, three?
1, 2, 3, if you want to count them, there are
Yeah.
10 knowledge areas, and these are the numbers for those 10 knowledge areas, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
you are right,
Okay.
we could have started from 4 till 13.
Understood.
If you
Okay.
want to
Now,
make a reference to 6th edition.
if we go back to the previous slide, right?
This one
In yeah, in my company, like
mhm.
in, you know, the project sponsor will
Okay.
never create a charter.
Okay, who creates the charter in your organization?
The project manager.
Oh my God.
Yes.
This is
The
like,
the the
you
project
ordering.
the project sponsor knows nothing about
Okay,
project
okay.
charter.
It is like ordering yourself. If
Yes,
you develop a charter as a project manager, you are
yes,
giving yourself orders what to do.
correct, which is why
But
we have
but your boss should
conflicts.
have ordered you.
So previously, we
Mhm.
had just to give you an example, when we're talking about business projects, right?
Uh-huh.
This is a business
Business
project.
case, yes.
No, as in like the project belongs to the business. You know what I
Okay.
mean? We initiate it, right?
Uh-huh.
But there is an IT component to it.
Right.
So IT, it's not an IT project, it's a business project with an IT component,
Right.
right? Now, the IT project manager
Right.
created the project charter and basically dictating how the business should be run,
Okay.
right? And there is a flaw in that because IT does not run the business. The business should own
Yes.
um, the
Exactly.
operational side of things,
Exactly. Exactly.
IT can't make a call, but this project manager, she put herself as the she created her own charter. And
Okay.
so, that's the flaw of it.
Okay, in principle,
Mm,
project sponsor or the steering committee are the people who should be able to authorize a project. They should
hmm
be the authors of this charter. But I do understand in most of the organizations, these people do not have enough knowledge about how to create a charter.
correct.
Therefore, it is allowed that they can seek help from the project manager who is just been nominated to help them create the charter in a proper format. But at the same time, that project manager is never considered as an author of the project charter. The
hmm
signatories of that, the order comes from the steering committee or it is signed by the project sponsor. Is it right in your case?
I agree with what you're saying, and that's what I would do. I would create the project charter and I would get the sponsor to approve it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. However,
So
there
as if
are,
this is the order given by the sponsor or the steering committee to the project manager. Project manager should never be considered as a author of this document.
to be fair, they are so laid back in New Zealand that
Mhm.
it's like I have to create the charter and then I tell them you must approve it. This is, or
Okay,
you have to look at it and give me some feedback. Here is the pros and cons. Basically,
right.
I'm taking them through that journey, which is why I got my question wrong the other day when you say who govern it.
Okay.
It's actually, the project manager governs it. It's because of lack of resources, essentially, lack of
Lack of
skills.
governance mechanism existing.
Correct. And so the answer I understand that who governs projects should be PMO.
Right.
Um, just like if there was a test and somebody asked me who creates the charter, I will get it wrong. I will say project manager, but it
Okay.
should
Okay.
be the project sponsor.
Exactly. Exactly.
Now, in this course, do they provide template of what a project charter should look like as good
Okay.
practice?
Yes, of course, but that is just a sample because
Okay.
PMI, as a standard making body, does not
Mm,
want to provide any kinds of formats or templates because if they provide a format that would be adopted as a standard and everybody would like to use that template. So
yeah.
PMI, if they provide something, they provide as a sample and they say that this is how it may look like, but you are the best judge to create your
Mhm.
own template or format in your organization.
But where is that template? This
I
sample.
will talk about it. That is going to come
Okay.
later. That is going to
Okay.
come later. Right now, I'm just trying to establish a linkage
Okay.
within all
Yeah.
these processes. But naturally, we will have detailed discussion on each one of these processes later on.
Okay.
I just want to put things on the ground. And the very first thing is the charter. When you, as a project manager, receive that charter, what is the first thing you should do? I remember you are sitting in initiation. You just received this order. What should
Mhm.
be next step in initiation? What should you look around for?
Who am I working with?
You are right now, you don't have a team, you don't have anything, you just are
Mhm.
talking to the sponsor.
What is the first thing well, if I get a somewhat a project charter,
Mhm.
I will read it. I will obviously digest it first,
Right.
and I will start to, I don't know, look at who will this be impacting?
Very good. Very good. That is exactly what you should do.
hmm
Normally, but the answer I get is we will just start planning. Well, how can you start planning until you understand what you are going to do?
hmm
So look for the stakeholders who all will be impacted by this project. So the
hmm
second process here is from the knowledge area of stakeholders, which is 13th chapter, last
hmm
10th, 10th, knowledge area, last knowledge area. and you start identifying as many stakeholders as you could. And you could even start talking to them, right? To
Yeah.
build a better understanding of what to do and what not to do. But you will not start any planning process as yet because you are still in initiation. I suppose this is well understood. This is all what you do in initiation. You receive the charter and then you talk to the identify and talk to those stakeholders. That's all. Initiation is completed. Now you can jump knee deep into the planning, which is a very thick process. A lot many things are to be done. Almost, rather I would say, all the 10 knowledge areas have to be planned in detail, isn't it? So you can see they are like shown as groups. This is a group of four processes. This might be related to one knowledge area. This could be a group of another 5 processes. This relates to another process area. So 1, 2, then this group 3, this group 4, this group 5, and then there are some independents 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All the 10 knowledge areas are being planned in detail. Some are planned in more elaborate detail, like in 4 or 5, 2, 3, 4 or 5 processes. Some are done in only one process. But an elaborate, detailed planning of everything is part of this planning process group. Now, one thing more I would like to tell you, integration is the father of all other 9 knowledge areas. Integration is a kind of a control that joins the results of all other knowledge areas into a consolidated whole. Therefore, we will always treat integration as the parent of all. And that is exactly why, because this parent is going to be overseeing whatever is happening in a process group. So there will be a parent process for planning. In this case, from integration 4.2, the second process of integration is develop project management plan, right? This is the integration process, but this greatly depends upon all other processes doing their work. And when they have submitted their work to the integration, only then that project management plan can be completed. So when we start planning, the first thing we start developing is a project management plan, but it remains open. All other plans are developed and they are submitted to the project management plan. And only then, when everything has been done and dusted, project management plan will stand completed. I hope you understand that. And similarly, we will have, you see, integration was there in initiation. Integration is here in planning. And then these two processes in execution, they both belong to integration. And these two processes in monitoring and control, they belong to integration. And this last process, the only process in closing, that belongs to integration. So how many processes belong to integration? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. There are 7 processes of integration, and that is the maximum number of processes, any process group. There are no other knowledge area which has more than 7 processes, and it is in control. This is boss of planning, boss of execution, boss of monitoring and control, boss of closing. Everywhere, integration is the boss. Now, if it is the boss, then everything else also has to be planned. So there are 9 other areas which are to be planned in detail. Let us look at them. The first set of 4 processes on the left-hand side, these are scope. Scope, 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 scope. 5.1, 2, 3, 4.
Mm-hmm.
What are they? First of all, we develop a scope management plan. After that, we collect the requirements. After that, we define the scope. And after that, we create a work breakdown structure. Now, here I need to discuss one thing, and I want to clarify what is our management plan. When we started integration, we developed a project management plan. When we started scope, we developed a scope management plan. When we are starting the scheduling, we are doing the schedule management plan. What is our management plan? How does it differ with a normal plan? Any ideas?
No.
Okay, management plan is not the detailed plan. Management plan is the guideline how we are going to work on that area. I mean, these are the guidelines, instructions, what is allowed, what is not allowed, and this is directly being inherited from the governance framework provided to us by the higher level management. You remember we talked about the governance?
Management plan is the, what did you say?
I said this management plan is the plan about the plan. It's a kind of a meta plan which just provides the guidelines, instructions, and rules and regulations, policies and procedures. And these things are not the detailed plan. This doesn't actually tell us which activity to do at what point in time. There are no details, but it tells us that, okay, if there are activities, then how to identify the activities, how to, whatever, how to deal with those activities, how to create a schedule, how to create a
Mhm.
scope. So these kinds of things are defined in the management plan. Therefore, to start planning of anything, any knowledge area, the first step would be to develop instructions for that.
I have to keep on remembering this is not stages.
This is
This
not
is
stages at all.
process
So,
groups.
so far, I'm not talking about stages.
I know, but it's really hard not to think about it as stages because they are group-like stages. You know what I mean? But they are not
But at the
stages.
same time, they have got a lot of parallelism. And stages, I said, stages do not generally intersect with each other.
I know, but it's what's hard for me to comprehend
Yes.
is that's why when you talk, I have to attentively listening because scope plan, scope management.
Mhm.
You're not actually talking about the scope of the project
Exactly. You
because
see,
the scope of the project, you have to do that at the very beginning before you even do your business
yes, that's
case.
what we are doing. This is the beginning. But before I can start defining the scope, I
Hmm.
am establishing the rule for defining the scope.
Okay, okay,
And
okay.
these rules have been inherited to me through the
Yeah.
governance framework.
Okay, I understand. This Ricardo Vargas is not making it easy,
No,
you
no,
know?
he has made it so easy. You see, if you look at the PMB, okay, you will be
Mhm.
totally confused. It is
Okay,
covered in 500 pages and you have to read all the 500 pages. This is the summary of those 500 pages.
okay. I'm gonna just keep on listening for now until, you know what I mean? Until I get the bigger picture.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Hmm.
Okay. So there is something special about scope because
Hmm.
uh, when you try to establish a scope,
Hmm.
you must have requirements also present as if you can define the scope according to the requirements, isn't it?
Hmm. Yeah.
But we don't see anything to do with requirements here. I mean, there is no requirement management plan being developed. We can't see it anywhere.
Hmm.
Then who is responsible for developing the requirement management plan? Because that is also a very important thing. Customer is giving requirements, customer is changing requirements, and
Hmm.
this has to be updated all the time. So
Mhm.
where are the instructions about the requirements? Well, about the scope, we will have instructions in the scope management plan, but what about the requirements do change?
Mhm.
So primarily, I will take you back to the business case where the business analyst was responsible for developing the business case. And while he was trying to develop the business case, it was his responsibility
Mhm.
to gather the requirements from the customers at
Mhm.
the stage of business case. But
Mhm.
naturally, once that business case has been approved, that responsibility of business analyst of requirement management has now shifted to the project manager as he can dig deeper into the requirements and
Mhm.
develop scope out of it.
Mhm.
Therefore, we still consider the requirement management is the job of business analyst, but a part of that job is to be done by the project manager now. Therefore, we don't introduce requirement management as a separate knowledge area, but we consider it part of the scope.
Mhm.
Every other knowledge area does have one management plan. Schedule has a schedule management plan, cost has a cost management plan, quality has a quality management plan. But in scope, we have two management plans to deal with.
Mhm.
One is the requirement management plan, and the other is the scope management plan. And both of them are part of this first process.
Mhm.
Although it says plan scope management, but actually the output of this process would be our requirement management plan and our scope management plan.
Mhm.
Now, when you are elaborating requirements with the stakeholder, that would be actually you are implementing on the instructions given in the requirement management plan, which you just created. And you are collecting requirements according to that. You are implementing the requirement management plan by collecting requirements. And collecting requirements is not a very simple process. It may be iterative process. You have to go back to the customer time and again, get
Mhm.
clarifications. Customer might be coming up with new requirement. You have to negotiate with that. So this is a very laborious process. Collect requirements is a very, time-consuming process. But at the same time, until the requirements are clear, the scope cannot be developed.
Mhm.
You agree with me?
Mhm.
So classically, this process 5.2, though it belongs to scope, but the purpose is collect requirements and it gets its instructions from the requirement management plan and not from the scope management plan because we have two management plans in this area, scope management
Mhm.
plan and requirement management plan. Once
Mhm.
all the requirements have been collected and they have been analyzed properly, that would actually define the product of the project, isn't it? When the requirements have been finalized, now we can clearly see what to produce, isn't it? That is called product scope. That is part of the next process, 5.3, where we actually define the scope. And the instructions how to define the scope are coming from the scope management plan.
Mhm.
Got it? And I already have the requirements. So those requirements I will further analyze and decide naturally in consultation with my bosses, with my stakeholders, with my customers that these are the requirements which must be included in the scope of the project.
Mhm.
So I would define the scope in two manners. First of all, I'll translate the requirements into a product scope, what is
Mhm.
to be created. And once the product scope has been established and
Mhm.
agreed, then I will translate that into project scope. That means what is the work required to be done to complete the product scope. So product scope and project scope are different. Product scope is what to produce, and project scope is how to produce. These two things are very important elements of your scope statement. Defined scope process results in a scope statement, and the salience of a scope statement are: what is the product scope, what is the project scope, what is in scope and what is out of scope, and any other requirements. Right? So this is the broad understanding of the scope established in shape of a scope statement. Scope statement is a major output coming out of defined scope. The document which comes out of defined scope is scope statement. What does it tell us? It gives us a summary of the project. It tells us what is the product scope. It tells us what is the project scope. It tells us what is in scope, what is out of scope, and it also may tell us if there are any other associated matters belonging to the scope.
Do you have another word for product scope?
Product scope, I could say this is the scope about the ultimate deliverable, what the deliverable should look like, what its specifications should be, what its functionalities could be. This is all about the product scope.
Would you give me an example, please?
For example, you want to build a table, how high the table should be, how long and width of the table should be, what is the color of the table, what is the wood of the table, what is the material of the table, what is the paint on the table. All these specifications about the product is the product scope.
Okay.
Now, the next question is, once you understand what is to be developed, then the question is, how am I going to be developed? Naturally, the material is wood, then I have to acquire the wood. Acquisition of wood could be a task. That would be my project scope. All the work involved to accomplish the product scope is my project scope.
Okay, I
Got
can
that
relate.
much?
So in my project scoping document, right, you have what you want to achieve. You know, for example, you will say a warehousing where it could store the following things: how many SKUs that you can store, how high is the warehouse.
These are the specifications.
This is like what does it look like, right? In terms of how we will set up the layout and the operational of it.
Yes.
We don't know yet at this point.
Yes.
At the product scope. Then you need to figure out how will you achieve that. That's your project scope. Okay.
Once you understand your product scope, then when you start asking yourself, how would I do it? Then you might be, presented with various alternatives. I am supposed to deliver this table with these specifications. What are the various options for me to do this job? Let me help you on that. First thing is, I learn to build the table myself and start building it. The second option could be, I can hire people who are experts in building the table, and I can depute this job to them. Third option is, I can sublet this job to someone who is expert in making tables on contract, and I could get it done on our contract. Third option could be, I could go to the market and buy a ready-made table of that specification and deliver it to my customer. You see, I am offered a lot many options. These are the alternatives available to me. To meet the product scope, I have various alternatives. I will analyze them thoroughly and do the cost benefit analysis. Whichever is the best solution, I would pick it up as my project scope. Got it?
So one of the scope would be project scope can have options. So
actually, project scope is a result of alternatives analysis or option analysis. That is
Okay,
not
so
exactly the
it's
scope.
the outcome of it.
Once you establish that this is the alternative or this is the approach I'm going to be using, that becomes your project scope.
Okay, so what you're saying is you can do another after you know that you're making a table, option one is you can build it yourself. You can buy it,
Yes,
right? You can sublet other people and you do your benefit analysis, and then you land on something that
yeah,
becomes your project scope.
exactly. But project scope is not a detailed plan. This
Yeah.
is just an outline that the approach I have selected, I'm convinced this is the way the things can be done. But now, once the approach has been decided, now I would go to the next process, and that is to breaking it down, creating a
Mm-hmm.
work breakdown structure, which you might have been doing already.
Mm-hmm.
So work breakdown structure only comes after you do have a project scope. You do have an understanding how are you going to go about it. Then you break it down into smaller and smaller parts until you reach a level which is called a work package level.
Mm-hmm.
I am not going down to the activity level because, as far as scope is concerned, we should not bother about the activities because dealing with activities is the job of the subsequent processes. Like
Mm-hmm.
scheduling, I would be requiring the activities. In costing, I will be requiring the activities. In resource estimation, I would be requiring the activities. But for now, I will stop here at the work package level. I will break down the scope down to the work package level. And a work package, every work package might have a number of activities, which I will talk later.
Okay.
I'm not going to break it down to the activity level, but this is sufficient for me as a project manager to break down my work breakdown structure to the work package level. Because as a project manager, when I'm gathering reports, progress reports, I would be more concerned about how much of that work package has been completed. So
Mm-hmm.
I would concern as a project manager myself with the work packages only.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you are clear about the four processes of scope, we can proceed ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Next, and actually, there are other processes of scope also, which will come subsequently. But in planning, we have only these four processes. For your information, there are two more processes of scope, which are these two. In monitoring and control, you can see the two top processes, two top
Yeah.
boxes. These are scope processes. One is the scope validation and other is the scope control. We'll talk about them later, but there are total of 6 processes of scope in in these process groups. Out of the 49 processes, 7 processes are integration, 6 processes are scope. 4 you can see here, and 2 will come in monitoring and control. That means there is no scope process in execution, there is no scope process in closing, and as you see already, initiation, there was no scope process in initiation also.
Mm-hmm.
The scope will be only required in planning and then in monitoring and control. Anyways, moving on, the next area is schedule, that is time. So first I develop a schedule management plan, how
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do the scheduling, the rules, regulations, policies, whatever the tools and techniques. Naturally, again, I said earlier that the management plans are inherited from the governance framework. Whatever are the broad guideline has been provided to you by your bosses about the governance of the project, you are strictly going to follow that and you can expand within that range. Naturally, when we develop our management plans for each one of the areas, we expand on that remaining within the governance guideline. We cannot defy the governance. Whatever is not allowed is not allowed.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, things might not have been explained in a lot of detail in governance, But in our management plan, we define them, explain them in more detail as if the further planning can happen. Once I have developed the schedule management plan, all the instructions are in place, then according to those instructions, I will start defining my activities. That means the work breakdown structure which was created at the end of the scope would give me the work packages. Those work packages will then be broken down into specific activities. One work package can be broken down into 3 activities. One could be broken down into 7 activities, and so on and so forth. So a couple of activities could be there in every work package. Here, I am creating a complete and a comprehensive list of all the possible activities which are going to be in the project. Once I have listed down all the activities, then I will start sequencing them. What is to be done first? What is to be done later? What is predecessor? What is successor? How do they link with each other? So this thing, which will ultimately result in the critical path, right? So sequencing is done. And while we are doing the sequencing, on the other hand, we could also be doing the estimation for each activity duration. We could say, okay, this activity will take 2 days, this will take 5 days, this will take 7 days. So we will create a duration for every activity we have identified. Now, this duration and the sequence put together would result in the critical path. Once you have the critical path, that can be translated into a Gantt chart. That is your schedule. Then at that stage, we develop the schedule. Schedule, it is like a Gantt chart. Every activity, time, starting time, ending time is defined. Length is defined. Everything is defined. Linkages are defined just because we have done that already. Moving on, the third group is cost. Again, we develop a cost management plan.
Just one thing.
Yes, please.
You said that there were, just going back because I'm just writing notes, there are 4, did you say, scope management? So we have the scope, the blue one, plan scope, and then there's 6 in total, and the other 2 is under monitoring controlling. Was that what you said?
Yeah, exactly. So as far as the schedule is concerned, 5 processes are shown here, and we have a schedule control somewhere in the monitoring and control. Only one more process. So 5 plus 1, there are going to be total of 6 processes related to schedule in the whole diagram.
Sorry, I was talking more about the scoping.
Scoping, we had 4 here and 2 there.
Okay.
4 in planning, 2 in monitoring and control.
And what was the terminology you used? It's just a scoping management, or?
No. Let it come. Let it come when we'll open up the monitoring and control, that all will be visible, right?
Okay.
But anyways, that is called scope validation and scope control. Similarly, the schedule process, which is in monitoring and control, that is called schedule control. The cost process is called cost control, right? And so on and so forth.
Okay, so that one is called a scope control.
Yes.
Okay, clear.
Okay, so now we are done with the schedule also. Let's move on to the cost. Again, like we know already, every time we start with a management plan. So for cost, we develop a cost management plan. All the instructions and guidelines, how to create the cost management plan is defined here. And naturally, that is governed by the governance framework. After that, I make my estimate against each activity which has been identified in schedule. Naturally, I have a list of all the activities already. So against each activity, I would calculate how much money is required to do this job. That is my detailed estimate for each activity. And once I have created the whole estimate for the project, I will submit that to my bosses and will have a debate with them and ultimately whatever they allocate me would be the budget. So
Mm-hmm.
budget will be determined in the third process.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the end of cost planning. But
Mm-hmm.
interestingly, one thing I must tell you, out of these 10 processes, these three, out of these, out of these 10 uh, process groups, these three areas, scope, time, and cost, are extremely very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
What is the reason for that? In the older books of project management, these three areas were used to be called as triple constraints because they thought that if scope changes, it will affect the schedule and cost. If the schedule changes, it will affect the scope and cost. If the cost changes, it will affect the scope and schedule. So therefore, they used to call it a triple constraint.
Mm-hmm.
But that term is now obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
We do not call these three things as constraints because we have now realized that these are not the only three constraints. Quality
Mm-hmm.
could also be a constraint. Resource could also be a constraint. Risk could also be a constraint. So there are more than three constraints, and therefore we stopped calling them triple constraint.
Mm-hmm.
Nevertheless, the importance of these areas still remain because they are really very special, and I will prove that to you. Why are they so special? Because anything we plan, like I plan quality, I plan resources, I plan risks, anything I plan, that will cost money, that will consume time, and that may affect the scope. So basically, if I can keep an eye on these three items, I could gain a complete control over the project.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, other areas, I'm not saying they are not as important, but naturally, if I can just keep these three items in my view, all the changes coming from other areas will actually be impacting either the scope or schedule or cost. Therefore, I have now realized that I can just keep focusing on these three items, and when it is the time to execute the project, I will again be focusing on these three items.
Mm-hmm.
Now, now that I have made it, I have realized that these three are the most important items. If they are not called the project constraints, then what do we call them? In the modern book, in the 7th edition, we call them as project objectives. We call scope, time, and cost as project objectives, meaning that a project cannot be defined without these three things. A project must have a scope, must have a time limit, must have a cost allocation.
Mm-hmm.
And if any one of these three things is not there, the project is not clearly defined. Now,
Yeah.
let us say you want to construct a house and you tell me, please construct a house for me. This is, you have told me what the project is, but I'm not clear about it. You have to tell me that it is going to be a 5-bedroom house or what, right? A condo or what? So you have to explain the scope of the project. You have to
Mm-hmm.
tell me some time limit that you want it in next 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to tell me your budget.
Mm-hmm.
Approximately, it may not be the final budget, but you have to give me an idea as if I can start planning it.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, these three areas are so important that they are considered as project objectives.
Mm-hmm.
And to keep a special focus on these project objectives, what we do is once any one of these plans are complete, scope, schedule, or cost, we need to get them approved by the big boss.
Mm-hmm.
And they are called the baselines, three baselines. When everything about the scope has been planned and approved by the boss, we call it scope baseline. When everything about the schedule has been planned and approved by the boss, the Gantt chart has been approved by the boss, then it is called schedule baseline. When everything about time, the budgeting has been done, we call it the cost baseline. Now, these baselines, once they are approved by the boss, they are frozen in time. Before the baseline was created, you were allowed to make any changes to them. But after it has been baselined, you are not allowed to make any further changes. If at all, ever there is a need to change anything in scope or time or cost, there would have to be a change request moved. It has to be approved by the boss. And when it is approved, then you are allowed to make changes to these three areas. And ultimately, actually, to the overall project management plan or any of the project documents. So out of the 10 areas, we have only 3 baselines. We don't need to create a baseline for quality, for resources, for risk, for any other area, but these 3 areas have to be baseline. Now the question is, when do we baseline the scope? As soon as the work breakdown structure has been created. We present that work breakdown structure, scope statement, and work packages to the boss, and when they agree to it, that is a go-ahead signal that we can now proceed with scheduling and costing and all other work. So scope is the first baseline which is created. Okay, when does the schedule baseline and cost baseline, they do get created? Although it looks like that schedule baseline should be created immediately after the scope and then the cost baseline, but it is not the case because as I said, that all other areas which are being going to be planned in planning, like quality and all other areas, risk and everything else, they will have impact on your cost and schedule, right? So we will wait for all other items, all other areas to have been planned, and their impact must be absorbed into our schedule and our budget. Only then we will get them baseline. That means the scope baseline, schedule baseline and cost baseline would happen after everything in the project has been completely planned. Then we will get the final baselines for the cost and the schedule. And once that is done, the planning stands completed.
So in my project,
Yes.
right? The moment you have your scope baseline, your time baseline, and your cost baseline
Yes.
has been approved,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That is the signal to proceed
Exactly.
to
That is
the
the point.
project. Now, that
Yes.
3 component
Yes.
in the company is what we call a business case.
No. It is not a business case. Business case is too sketchy. Business case is not as detailed as we are discussing here.
I know, but what I'm saying is
we are going into the nuts and bolts of it. But in business case, we don't go into that many nuts and bolts. We just have a general idea whether it will be feasible or it will not be. Though we do discuss the scope and
how can you have a business case beforehand?
You should have a business case because business case is the proof that this project is viable. But if you want that you can execute the project just based on the business case without creating any further plan, it would be impossible. Business case is too sketchy.
This is what I struggle with in my head, because in reality, right, once we have these 3 components, right,
Yes.
then in the business that I'm in, that's when you create a business case, and that is what gets approved, and that's where the funding gets approved. Maybe I'm using the wrong
Funding
terminology.
get approved, I agree. funding get approved, I agree. But that is not the business case. Okay, let me tell
Okay.
you.
Maybe we're
Business
using
case
the
was
same
created.
terminology, but it maybe we're talking about two different things because the
No, no, no.
wording is business case.
Let me come to that. You
Yeah.
see, the business case was created before the project was started, but it was too sketchy. After
Mhm.
the project charter was issued to the project manager, business case was handed over to the project manager as well. The approved business case was handed over to the project manager. Now, as the project manager keeps planning further, he
Yeah.
keeps updating the business case. You, as a project manager, have the responsibility of updating the business case. You are responsible to ensure that the business case remains viable throughout the life of the project. So this is your responsibility to maintain the project, the business case, right? Because you are doing
Okay.
it.
Let me ask you another question. What
Mhm.
is in the business case? Is there financials in the business case?
There is a broad financial which just proves that it is doable. That's all. But as
Okay.
we get more data, we have more details, then we are more explicit about it. Like
Okay.
now we
So
have done the budgeting, now we have done the scheduling, now we know everything.
when do
Not
you get the funding release? After business case or after?
after the budget has been approved, that is where the funding is released. So you
Okay.
may
So
update
that
your business case at that stage.
Okay, so that is where I'm confused.
Okay.
Okay, so what you're saying is business case gets approved first. There
Yes.
is no release of funding. It's just a
Actually,
case.
business case is just a viability. They are just asking you, for example, you are an analyst. They are asking you, we want to do this project. What do you think? Will it be okay? Will it be beneficial for the organization? You do some little calculations here and there, and you say, well, statistically speaking, this is good. This is a good action. Let us go for it.
Okay.
Then you approve the project. You say, okay, this is viable. We are going for it. And now you are the project manager and you are going into the depth of calculation. And you prove again with your calculation that this project is really very viable. And therefore, now please allocate me the funding for that.
Okay. I understand. I understand the teaching process here. But
Right.
in the company that I'm in, a business case comes with a budget.
Okay.
You see what I mean? So,
Right.
but
I do understand.
actually good practices. You do your business case, then you do your scope, your planning, your
Yes.
detailed budget, then you ask for the money, and then the business case evolves. So,
Evolve. Yes.
version
Exact.
one might be different, and then as you get into the next level, it might be version three with the new cost, and then you get
Yeah,
the
exactly. You see,
okay.
during the
I
life
understand.
of the project, during the life, when you have done the planning and you are even executing and monitoring and control the project, you are supposed to keep updating the business case. And at if any stage you realize that business case is no more valid due to changing environment and circumstances, you may recommend the project may be closed down immediately.
Do people know this?
Yes,
Because I
definitely.
work with like so many different business units and they never do this.
Have
Okay.
you ever seen abnormal termination of a project?
Um, yes.
So that was it. That was that. At that point, that business case was proven to be not viable according to whatever situation. Maybe the environments have changed. For example, I am trying to create a new model of a flagship phone. And while I'm creating that, someone else creates better thing than that, and we may have to abandon this project. So, although this was a very good business case, but we failed because someone else broke it. So,
It
therefore,
happened
yeah,
in manufacturing
mhm,
environment where you create the business case
right,
and then and then you get well, I don't know, this might be a wrong example, and then you get the budget approved,
Right,
right? And
right.
then as you move on to the project, your
Okay.
business case changed, and
Yes,
then
of
you
course.
need and then you need more funding.
Maybe if you need more funding, and maybe it is very much possible that maybe the technology in the market has suddenly changed and nobody is going to buy what you are making. Therefore, you may decide to close the project right there and then. It is no more viable.
Well, that's tricky, isn't it? What about if you're building a tunnel, for example, for Auckland
I
City,
have
right?
I have seen tunnel projects stopping for
Yes,
years.
that's not good at all.
That is not good, but that is not viable.
Are you
When
saying
it
that that's
becomes not
reality?
viable, yeah,
But are you saying that that's reality, or are you
that
saying
is reality. You
or are
see,
you saying that's bad project management?
you have to stop pumping money into a useless project. If a project is not going to achieve its target and you know it, you are not really interested in pumping more money into it. You should immediately cut your losses and run.
And you wouldn't say that's bad planning?
No, not at all. That is environmental or technological advancement in the market. That could cause that. Yes, of course, sometimes it is your bad planning, but it also comes from other sources. Technology
Mm,
has changed, environment has changed. You were doing a very fantastic project, which was very viable, and the war breaks out in your country. What will happen? Will you
mm,
continue the project? No, you have to stop it. You have to close it down because the environment dictates that this project is no more viable,
mm.
right?
It's like when you're building a tunnel and then COVID happens and
Yeah,
all of your
exactly.
material goes up. That's not within your control.
Yes,
But
exactly.
sometimes projects do fail due to poor planning.
Of course they do. Of course,
Okay.
the failure of business case could be due to many reasons. Those reasons
Okay.
could be internal or external, whatever the reason is. But as soon as you, as a project manager, you realize that this is no more viable, you must inform your bosses as if they can call off the project.
Okay. I understand now.
Okay. Uh, when the scope, time, and cost is done, practically speaking, we have done everything, but actually we have yet not done everything. We have not talked about other things which are necessary for the completion of schedule and budget. And
Mm-hmm.
those are, we have not talked about the quality management. So
Mm-hmm.
they may be considered the secondary items, but they are contributing majorly to the development of our schedule and determination of our budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, all of these things should also be done. Quality management, you should set up a complete mechanism of quality management, how the quality assurance is to be done, how the quality control is to be done. Then, as far as resources are concerned, you should plan how the resources are to be managed. And when I say resources, I am talking about all kinds of resources,
Mm-hmm.
human resources and the material and the equipment and anything, the raw materials, everything you must calculate. So you estimate those resources. And naturally, when you estimate those resources, that may impact your cost estimates and the budget.
But
Therefore, we
when
have
you
not
do,
frozen the budget as yet. We have not frozen the schedule as yet.
we're not frozen it yet. Okay.
We will freeze them when everything else has been done. When we are done with
Okay.
all these blanks, then only we will freeze our schedule and budget, and that would be the baseline. So their baseline, these two baselines are yet not created, but we are doing further work. What else?
Mm-hmm.
We plan communication.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, some cost and some time will be spent in communication as well. We
Mm-hmm.
plan the risk,
Mm-hmm.
and risk is an elaborate process. We identify the risk, we qualify the risk, we quantify the risk, we do a lot of analysis on risk, and then we develop certain risk responses. And naturally, they will also cost money
Mm-hmm.
and time. So this is all being building up into our schedule and budget. Then we also,
What do you mean by it costs money when you plan risk?
you see, if there is a risk which is likely to occur, we have to keep some reserves.
Okay.
Yes. So that reserve has to be in the budget. And maybe dealing with that risk will take some time. That will delay the project. So that
Can you
time
give
must
me an
also be built
example?
into our schedule.
What would be the example of
There is a likelihood of something bad happening to your project, due to which the project will be delayed and it will cost more. It may happen or it may not happen. If it does happen, it will affect your schedule and it will affect your budget. So, as a proactive measure, you have kept reserves in your schedule and in your budget for
clear?
that eventuality.
Okay.
Okay, procurement, all the work which you think you can't do yourself and you have to take outside help of a contractor, or you have to subcontract it, you have to outsource it, that work is also to be planned.
Mm-hmm.
And last but not the least, we have already identified the stakeholders in the initiation. Now we will develop a detailed stakeholder engagement plan.
Mm-hmm.
How these stakeholders will have to be kept engaged throughout the life of the project. It has to be an elaborate plan. And naturally, that may also cost a little bit of money or time. Therefore, all of these things, when done, then the schedule and the budget will be baseline. And that is the time the planning will stand completed.
That's when it's frozen and you ask for the money and it's frozen.
Yeah, exactly. Because allocation of money is coming after the determination of budget, and determination of budget is happening after all this has happened.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, of course, when the planning is done, then you wait for the approval, and when the approval is given, that means your schedule is baseline, your cost is baseline, your scope scope is baseline. Scope, schedule, and cost, three baseline. They have to be baseline, as if you can get into the execution.
Okay.
Okay, as far as the execution is concerned, we have only 10 processes. And at the heart of it is naturally the integration, two processes of integration. One is called direct and manage project work. The other
Mm-hmm.
is called manage project knowledge. This is
Mm-hmm.
happening while you are executing the project, meaning
Mm-hmm.
whatever has been planned, the overall responsibility of implementing everything, of directing and managing all the project work now lies with the integration. Integration is the boss who will
Mm-hmm.
get everything executed.
Mm-hmm.
Are you okay with it?
Mm-hmm.
And
I need
by
30 seconds. I need to write some notes.
yeah, sure. While we are doing the project, we will learn a lot many things. And whatever we learn during the process of execution, that is dealt with by the next process, manage project knowledge. You got it? So this is also an integration responsibility. They
Sorry,
are
I
number
just
4.3 and
I just
4.4.
need 30. I need to write some notes. One
Okay,
moment.
sure, sure.
Therefore, mm-hmm.
Actually, we have not taken any break. Maybe we tried.
Okay.
Right. So in execution, we have two processes of integration. One is
Mm-hmm.
responsible for overall execution of the project, direct and manage project work, and other is responsible for collecting all the knowledge gained during the process of execution and putting it together.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from these two processes, we have just 8 more processes, but
Mm-hmm.
you will be shocked to learn one thing here. although we said scope, time, and cost are the project objectives and they are the most important thing and they are the three baselines, there is no process in execution representing scope or time or cost. Why? We have managed quality, we have processes relating to resources, we have processes related to managing the stakeholder engagement, communication, procurement, risk responses, but no mention of scope, time, and cost. Why?
Is it because by then the planning is completed, so now you're executing it?
Yes. And who is responsible for executing everything?
The team
Integration process.
integration process.
Is it they're the boss? So actually, the scope baseline, the schedule baseline, and cost baseline has been consolidated into a project performance baseline, and the integration has taken it over.
Who's responsible for
The project manager
managing?
is in charge of integration.
Okay, all integration.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
project manager has taken it on. His team is actually now ensuring that things are happening as per the plan. If we had separate processes for execution of scope and schedule and cost, there might be some, misalignment. But once they have been unified, then we are exactly in order. That is the reason why we don't have any process for scope, schedule, and cost in execution. So we have two processes for integration, none for scope, time, and cost. And for quality, we have managed quality process, which means we are doing the quality of the processes, quality assurance.
Sorry, just to repeat, it's because the scope, time, and cost, they are all part of the integration. And so the
Yes,
project manager, it's just executing it. So
yes,
if
yeah,
everything
exactly,
runs
exactly,
according to schedule, they shouldn't matter.
exactly.
But
We have
quality is the
we
one that will derail it.
exactly. We have the
Okay.
schedule. He will just follow the schedule and execute it. We have the
Mm-hmm.
cost, budget, everything mentioned. So he will just
Mm-hmm.
keep spending the money as per the budget, and
Mm-hmm.
he would be completing the schedule as per the scope baseline. So
Mm-hmm.
everything is integrated, and therefore there is no problem. I would say there is very less application of mind during execution. Planning is the basic mind. We
Mm-hmm.
planned everything very intricately, and now in execution, we just have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, we don't have to make many decisions. We just have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to worry about, something. But yes, one thing can happen that things do not turn out to be as they were planned. That
Mm-hmm.
will be looked into in monitoring and control. That is not the problem of execution. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because execution and monitoring and control are happening side by side.
Mm-hmm.
The people responsible for execution are doing it, and
Mm-hmm.
people responsible for monitoring and control are keeping an eye on them
Mm-hmm.
and correcting the problems if there are any. So execution doesn't have to think a lot, doesn't have to apply a lot of mind. But
Mm-hmm.
again, the monitoring and control holds the main decision making, what to do and what not to do, what to
Mm-hmm.
correct and how to correct it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, let me discuss the other processes in execution. You remember about the resources, we developed a resource management plan and we estimated the resources in planning. Now,
Mm-hmm.
according to those estimates, we and appropriate time, whenever those resources are required, we will acquire those resources.
Mm-hmm.
They may be the human or the other resources. We will acquire them just in time whenever required. So it is
Mm-hmm.
not that we are going to acquire all the resources at once, but whenever some resources are required, they will be acquired throughout the life of the execution.
Mm-hmm.
Then, whenever teams are required, we will develop them. And once the team has been developed, we will get them to work and we will
Mm-hmm.
just manage them. These
Mm-hmm.
three processes relate to resources. Then, as far as the stakeholder is concerned, we have already identified the stakeholders in initiation. We have developed a stakeholder engagement plan in planning. Now, we manage those stakeholders as per the stakeholder engagement plan. So we are managing the stakeholders accordingly as per the plan. Similarly, we developed a communication plan in planning. Now we manage the communication. We actually conduct those communications as per the plan. Procurements, whatever we decided to outsource, this is the time when the contracts will be awarded, job will be done by the subcontractors. So from our side, we will be conducting these procurements during the execution. Last but not the least is the risk. The risk responses we had created, we might have created a lot many risk responses, but all the risks will not occur. Whichever risk is likely to occur is closing to us, we will implement risk responses accordingly because we don't want to waste our money. A risk which is not happening, is not about to happen, why should we waste our money on it? So we will only apply the funds to those responses which are most likely to occur or which are about to occur. That is as much as the execution is concerned. Let us move on to monitoring and control. I said again, we apply a lot of mind here. Here we have got at the heart of it two processes of integration. One is the in charge for monitoring and controlling all the project work. Like we had direct and managed project work in execution. This is the guy who is keeping an eye on whatever is being done during the execution. So they will keep an eye on everything. Monitor and control project work. And the other process is if there are any change requests which may result in amendment to the baselines, which the baselines may have to be recreated or reapproved, then that could only happen if the proper change control procedure is followed. Anyone who requests for a change request all these change requests will land here in this process, and those will be properly processed, presented to the board of directors, the project board, and they will decide whether this change is allowed or it is not allowed. And if it is allowed, then they will have a flexibility that now the relevant plan can be amended, project management plan can be amended accordingly, the baselines can be amended, and from this moment onwards, the new plan will come into effect in execution. So this is as far as the integration is concerned, but this is not done by these two processes. This is supported by all other knowledge areas around it. So all the controls and all the monitors are here, and they belong to all of the knowledge areas. For example, we have got scope. The two processes are there for scope, validate scope and control scope. This is controlling the schedule. This is controlling the cost. This is controlling the quality. This is controlling the resources. Then this is controlling the procurement. But then we have got three types of monitors because there are some things which can't be controlled. When we talk about controlling, we are talking about non-living objects. When we talk about living objects or real things, then we say we can't control them, we monitor them. We monitor the communications, we monitor the risks, and we monitor the stakeholder engagement. So there are three monitors, and rest there are 6 controls. And one thing is different, that is validate scope. Let me talk about those. First of all what is happening in execution, that is being reported to monitoring and control, right? Those news are coming here. What is happening? So that is called work performance data, which is generated when the work is done. The data generated of what has been done, how much has been done, this is called the work performance data. But execution people do not make any comparisons. They don't say that what should have been done and what is being done. They just talk about what is done, right? So because execution doesn't apply any brains, the brain has to be with the monitoring and control. Here, there has to be an analysis that according to the schedule or budget, what should have been done and what has been done and what is the variation and what is the analysis. So all this is done by these various controls and monitors. So work performance data gets to these monitors and controls. They are all around the integration here. All these get the work performance data. Each one of these controls get the work performance data. And all of them, in their own capacity, with their own specialization, they process and analyze that data. And the processed data, the analyzed data, is then called the work performance information. You remember when a data is processed, it is converted into information. So now all of these controls have created work performance information, and they submit their work performance information, all of them, they submit it to monitor and control project work. That is their boss. Monitor and control project work consolidates all their work performance informations, all their observations, and consolidate it into a document which is called work performance report. So what has happened? Execution created some work performance data, which was analyzed separately by every control of different knowledge areas, and those were converted into work performance informations. All the work performance information was sent to monitor and control project work, which consolidated that into a work performance report. This is a very robust mechanism of collecting, analyzing, and creating this final report. So we have addressed one aspect, that is the data, which has been processed and ultimately converted into report. What else is happening? There are so many people who are submitting change requests. Even the stakeholders, the customer, or maybe during execution, if something is not doable, execution is also requesting for a change. And during the analysis, each of these controls, when they analyze that there is something wrong going on, they may also request a change. So all the changes are submitted in form of change requests to this process, perform integrated change control. So all change requests are received here. Here the project board assembles on a regular basis. They review all the change requests, and if there are viable change requests, they will approve them. And as soon as a change request is approved, it is now allowed to amend the project plan or the baselines accordingly. Otherwise, without this permission, you could not ever have changed the project management plan or the baselines. But now that the change request has been approved, you can make requisite changes and update your plans and let the execution know that from this moment onwards, we are going to be following the updated plan only. Please stop following the old plan. That's how the things get into control. One last thing about monitoring and control is, out of these 12 processes, most of them are dealing with the process, with the work. All the work is happening. We are talking about work performance data, work performance information, work performance report. So we are always talking about work. There are only two processes which talk about the product. Product, whatever the product is, whether it is part of a product or the end product, will first have to go through quality control. Quality control will verify the product that it is, according to the quality. If it is according to the quality, it will be verified. Otherwise, the quality control will request a change.
Mm-hmm.
If it is according to the quality and it has been verified, that doesn't really mean that this can now be handed over to the customer.
Mm-hmm.
The verified product will have to pass through the acceptance criteria of the requirements,
Mm-hmm.
which is part of scope. So
Mm-hmm.
validate scope is the process which receives the verified deliverable and checks it on a checklist given
Mm-hmm.
by the customer that these are the elements which must be present in the product as if we can accept it.
Mm-hmm.
So validation happens there, and when
Mm-hmm.
a product has been validated, it is
Mm-hmm.
declared as an accepted deliverable.
Mm-hmm.
So the journey of deliverable here only relates with first with quality, the quality control, which verifies, and then with validate scope, which validates and accepts the deliverable.
Mm-hmm.
Rest, all the 10 processes are only dealing with the work.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the story of monitoring and control. So you see, this execution and monitoring and control is happening concurrently, and the changes are happening, and a plan is being updated, and this cycle is going on between planning, execution, and monitoring and control until all the work has been done. Meaning all the deliverables have been accepted, and now it is just to be handed over to the customer. All the project work has been finished, all the deliverables have been created. Now we go to closing process. Here we have only one process, that is integration, and integration is responsible. This close project and phase process is responsible for ensuring that all the requirements have been completed, all the lessons learned have been recorded and handed over to the organization. All the resources have been let go.
Mm-hmm.
All the contracts have been closed and paid off. Nothing is
Mm-hmm.
outstanding. And now we can declare the project or the phase closed. Why phase? Because phase, I said, is like a mini project. At the
Mm-hmm.
end of a phase, we do the closing as well. And at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the project, we do the closing for the whole project.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, we have gone through all the 49 processes. Now
Mm-hmm.
you decide what you would like to do, which processes are more important for you. You
Mm-hmm.
can pick and choose. Decision is
Mm-hmm.
yours. But these are the good practices. This is how a predictive project should happen.
Mm-hmm.
Armed with this knowledge, you can tailor it according to your need. I'm not saying that you have to follow it to the book. You have to tailor it according to your need. That is what is the spirit of project management. It says,
Mm-hmm.
I am telling you the rules, you have to play the game. And whatever suits you, play it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, any questions about this whole chart?
So work performance data,
Yes,
it then gets turned into a work performance information,
yes,
and then it gets collected by the monitoring and controlling integration,
yes.
and then it results in work performance report.
Very good. Very good.
Okay. Understood.
So, this is it. I think for the last 2 hours, we have been talking and talking and talking. We can have a little break here.
Mm-hmm.
How much break do you want?
15 minutes?
Okay, let's have a break for 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, see you after 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Most welcome. Can you hear me? Hello?
Hello.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I've just had dinner.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, any questions about this chart?
Nope.
Okay, then the only next thing I need to tell you is about the various documents we have in project management. Well, you see, we have two categories of documents. One category is called the project management plan, and the other category is called other documents or project documents. What all is included in the project management plan? First of all the 10 knowledge areas, their respective management plan is, as I told you, that is part of the project management plan. So you can see here from 1 to 10, these are the 10 project management plans. The management plans, 1 to 10, which we have already discussed. So because we have already talked about them, so all these plans will become part of the project management plan. On number 11, it says change management plan. Well, this is not a mandatory plan because we assume that each management plan will have the mechanism of change defined within that plan. How the changes to scope can be brought about would be written down in the scope management plan. How the changes to requirements would be written down in the requirement management plan, and so on and so forth. But still, if you want to have a centralized document which could address all kinds of changing happening in the whole project, the mechanism of that could be recorded in a separate document by the name of change management plan. Does it make sense? Okay, then we could have yet another document which is also associated with the change. This is called configuration management plan. And the difference between change management plan and the configuration management plan is Change management plan tells you how to bring about a change. That gives you a mechanism. Any change will be going through a change request, and this is how the process would be. The whole mechanism, how a change can be brought about, is in the change management plan. But configuration management plan keeps a record of all changes. This is kind of an archive where we record various versions of various plans and documents, and even the various versions of the product. So configuration management is that. If you are already aware about what the configuration means, it would be easier for you to understand. What is configuration from your point of view?
I've never heard of configuration
Okay,
management.
very good, very good. Okay, if you look up the sky, what is the configuration of clouds you can see? There is a specific configuration of clouds on the sky. You can see they are making some shapes on the sky, right?
Mm-hmm.
Next day, you look up the sky, that would be in a different configuration.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just how things appear at various instances in time. If you prepare a document, whenever it goes through a change, its shape will change. But the previous version was also recorded somewhere, but you don't destroy it, but you create a newer version of that, and then yet another version, and you keep the record of all the configurations of that document. That is called configuration management plan. How to keep record of all the possible configurations of anything. It could be a document, it could be a product, it could be a plan, whatever that is.
Could you give me an example, please?
For example, you prepare a business case for the first time in a draft format, right? And when you get satisfied, you convert it into final version.
Mm-hmm.
You present it to your boss and he approves it. Later on, business case gets amended somewhere, and there is yet another version coming up. But you keep all the older versions in record.
Okay.
That is called the configuration management.
Okay. Clear.
So this is also an optional plan, but this is a very important plan. If you understand the concept of configuration management, you probably would love to have this kind of thing, which will help you trace everything.
Okay.
Okay, then we have the three baselines. All the three baselines are also part of the project management plan. And they are the scope baseline, the schedule baseline, and the cost baseline. And these are the three things which are executable. And during execution, they come into action through direct and managed project work. Direct and managed project work actually consolidates these three baselines into a performance measurement baseline and executes that. So performance measurement baseline is nothing but a consolidation of scope baseline, schedule baseline, and a cost baseline. So that is number 16, performance measurement baseline. That is what is executed by the direct and managed project work during execution. Then you remember I told you that when you do a project, you have to choose your own way of working. You have to tailor it according to your need. So this is your option. This is your choice. What method of project management you want to use, what life cycle you want to adopt. So the life cycle description and the choice of your development approach, like hybrid, predictive, or agile, that could also be provided in the project management plan. That what are the various development approaches we are following, which is the life cycle we are using. That kind of description could also be forming part of the project management plan. So you see, all the most necessary items are here, and the execution can actually happen based on project management plan. Although the management plans are not really very important here, they will only be referred when we need to do something about that management plan. But primarily in execution, we are working on the baselines.
So scope baseline, schedule baseline, and cost baseline,
Yes,
they make up your performance measurement baseline, does it?
exactly, exactly.
Okay.
Okay, anything
But
else?
but
Yes,
it's being ruled by the integration of project management plan.
exactly, exactly.
Okay.
Now, these are the only documents which could form part of project management plan. But during the planning, you have created many other documents. You
Mhm.
created an activity list, you created assumptions, you created basis for estimate, change logs, cost estimate, and what not.
Mhm.
But those are documents which actually led you to the final baselines. So the executable thing is the baseline. All other documents which were interim documents in the production of those baselines are in doing the planning of the project, they all will go into another basket we call the project documents. They are also important, but they are not as important as a project management plan. So they will be referred sparingly. They may be referred when required, but they are not considered part of the project management plan. They are extra documents, other documents, and they are called the project documents, and they could be placed separately from the project management plan,
Mhm.
right? If there is a change in the project, anything out of these could be amended as a result of that change. So when there is a change, approved change request, and then you will have to consider which management plans are affected by that and what should be changed. Naturally, the instructions or guidelines provided for scope management plan might be amended.
Mhm.
So you can update the scope management plan, or you can update the procurement management plan, or you can update the scope baseline, schedule baseline, cost baseline, or even your life cycle and development approach. Those
It
things
just
could be amended or changed as a result of the change request.
it just has to be recorded
Yes,
in our favorite configuration management plan.
exactly, exactly. Moreover,
Mhm.
change request may also affect some of the calculations or the documents in the project documents, because these are also important documents which can be referred to. We don't want them to be outdated. So as a result of a change request, if your schedule has changed, maybe you intend updating the schedule data, schedule forecast, or something else like that. So all of these documents may also be amended and kept in configuration management as per the change request approved.
Mhm.
Okay, that is good enough. If you have understood this, then we have a basic idea of how the predictive project management works. The details we will be talking later when we will be discussing each one of those areas, like how the development charter is developed, how the various things are done. We'll talk more about it. But as for now, this portion of this chapter is done. And in this portion, what we have discussed, we talked about the process groups, we talked about the knowledge areas, we talked about the process-oriented PMI framework, which comprises of the project management plan and the project document, which was in the previous slide.
Mhm.
So that was the portion which we are done with. Now, the next part is strategic alignment, the second topic. And this is again very interesting and very engrossing, and you might pay more attention to it. But I leave it to you whether you want me to start it now. If you are not really tired, I can take this half hour and try to explain as much as I can, or we can pend it to the next class, whatever you say.
Mm. What would you like to do?
I have no problem. I can start this. I can speak on this for next half an hour. No problem at all. If
If
you are
we
tired and you want, to go, option is yours.
if we move it to next week, do we have time?
Today is the last class of this week.
Yeah, as in to next week.
Yeah. Okay, fine. I have absolutely no problem. It would be very nice to start a new topic in the new week. I think that
Mhm.
would be very fine.
Okay. It's
But
now,
as we are closing this session down today, I again will ask you if you have any queries, any questions, any clarifications to ask for, please do.
I have no questions.
Okay, wonderful. Then we can call quits for today. I
Okay.
really thank you for listening very attentively to me. And actually, I know I can be speaking all the time, maybe non-stop. So maybe you had difficulty, making notes and all. But you see, I also didn't want to stop my flow of thought.
No worries. I did not have the printouts of today. I was like trying to look for it.
But what did you not have?
The previous section.
Uh,
So
uh,
I have topic A, topic B,
yeah,
but
this
I
section.
don't have,
Yeah, actually, this was added later.
yes,
This
so
is
I
not
don't have topic
okay.
8.1. So I
I
was
can
trying to
share.
look
I can
for it.
share. Okay, what you can do is, I would suggest there is nothing very important in it except for this chart.
That's okay. I've
If
seen it in a different printout, so I'll print that
Yeah,
out
yeah,
like
exactly. If you can go
another time.
to, you can search for Ricardo Vargas. This
Yeah.
you can find it in a big chart, and you
Hmm.
can print a huge chart from there. But if you try to print this one, it might not be really very visible to you, right? It is very small.
Yeah.
So search it out there. It would be good.
Mhm.
But if you want, I can do that for you. I can also search it out, and if at all I
No
find it,
worries.
I can send it to
I
you.
can find it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Most welcome. Take care and bye bye.
I will see you on Monday.
On
Yeah.
Monday. Thank you very much and take care.
Monday. Thank you. Have a good weekend. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye bye.